The Prime Minister apparently is going to overhaul the asylum appeal system, limiting the authority of judges to address a mounting backlog. Being reported in the Times, apparently this all comes amid escalating protests, of course, which we saw yesterday over migrant hotels.
Indeed, and the Home Office argues it will enable the government to move asylum seekers out of hot hotels faster, but could it all be too little too late?
Well, joining us now in the studio, GB News political correspondent Olivia Utley. I haven't seen you since you left to have the baby. How is he?
He's wonderful, yeah. He's 8 months old now.
But you can't stay away from politics, can you?
No,
I mean,
exactly.
You must have been sitting at home. I know you don't want to leave your baby, of course, at home. But the lure of coming back to work, there is so much to talk about at the moment.
So much to talk about. I had 5 months when nothing very much happened, and then the local elections happened, and it suddenly got so exciting. So I'm very pleased to be back.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you are back, yeah. So, it seems like they're always on the back foot, this government. Something happens, the people get riled up about it, they start speaking about it, or opposition members start speaking about something, and then it's almost as though there's a knee-jerk reaction from the government. Is this another?
Well, it does feel like it. Ministers say that these plans have been in the works for weeks and weeks, and yet they have only reacted, as you say, it does feel a little bit knee-jerk since this Epping protest and the resulting High Court injunction which allows the council to block this protest. So you've got the situation where the government is desperately trying to do something about the number of migrants housed in hotels. That has gone up hugely, gone up by 8% just since Labour took office. In the last financial year alone, it's cost £5.4 billion. Now, the reason behind this huge and expanding number of migrants being housed in hotels is how long the asylum process takes. On average, it takes over a year, and sometimes it could take much longer, many years, for an asylum decision to be reached. And that is because there's this sort of labyrinthine process between a person applying for asylum and their case finally being either accepted or rejected. Lots of them are rejected right at the beginning, and then they go through this process where they can appeal to a tribunal. Now, what the government is saying at the moment is that the problem is that there's first-tier tribunal judges, as they're called, the very first people you can appeal to if you're an asylum seeker who's had your claim rejected. They are over-interpreting the EU right to a family life and essentially pushing through lots of appeals which the government think, which Yvette Cooper and the Home Office think should not be accepted. So what the government is proposing to do now is get rid of that layer of first-tier tribunal judges, get rid of a layer of the judiciary. So essentially, instead of having those judges, you would just have a board of sort of professional adjudicators, they're calling them. And what the government hopes is that that would mean that lots of those asylum appeals which get accepted would actually be rejected at that very first hurdle. And that would theoretically really speed up the process. Now, there's lots of problems here. Obviously, one of them is that there is this enormous backlog of asylum seekers in hotels. And as you said there in the introduction, it feels like a little bit too little too late. Perhaps if you started with this programme now and you didn't have a backlog, you might be able to clear some cases quickly. But with this sort of bottleneck, it'll be very hard to make an impact at the kind of speed that the government needs an impact to be made. The other problem is that there are going to be lots and lots of left-wing Labour MPs who don't like this at all, who will worry, who will believe that the human rights of these asylum seekers are being compromised because they won't be able to get that legal right to appeal at the very first hurdle. Now, you would think that with a Labour majority of whatever it is, I've lost track, but, you know, that huge Labour majority that Keir Starmer won last year, that wouldn't really matter, that this would get through really easily. But as we saw with the welfare bill, actually, those Labour MPs aren't particularly loyal to Keir Starmer, and they could easily upturn this legislation before it even gets through the Commons.
Using the internet without a VPN, a virtual private network, is a bit like taking to the road without car insurance. All it takes is one unlucky moment to cost you a lot of cash. This video's sponsor is Private Internet Access. They are the VPN to help keep you safe. Click the link in the description below to find out why over 30 million people have downloaded PIA to protect themselves online. A virtual private network is an app that hides your IP address and helps keep your data private. When you're browsing the internet at home, you give up a large amount of data to businesses, to shops, and indeed to social media giants too. Hackers have the ability to steal your personal data with ease, including sensitive information such as passwords, keystrokes, and even your personal photos. Private internet access helps protect your personal data by encrypting your internet connection to keep your data out of the hands of cyber criminals. And it's not just hackers either to be concerned about. Information can be censored too. When Canada passed their C18 bill, social media giants decided to ban news content on their platforms. But PIA can protect your ability to consume the news and content you love. Private internet access is available for Windows users, Mac OS, Android, Linux, iOS, and you can use one PIA subscription to protect an unlimited amount of devices. And we've got a huge GB News discount for you too. Click the link in this video's description and you'll get a massive 83% off PIA. That's under £2 a month, the price of a coffee, and you'll get an extra 4 months completely free on top. Also, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee too. Visit piavpn.com/GB News to start protecting yourself digitally today.
What's to stop these independent adjudicators, like the judges have, over-interpreting the European Convention on Human Rights?
Well, I think that's a real worry, and I think Yvette Cooper is very aware of that. Now, she says that what she's going to do is tighten up the guidance in the first instance for these first-tier tribunal judges, and then once they are replaced by the professional adjudicators, for the professional adjudicators too. But of course, you know, people who chooses them, exactly. And also you have people like Nigel Farage, Kemi Badenoch too, would say that some of these judges are motivated by politics, really, that they have a sort of ideological agenda. And as you say, how do you stop those professional adjudicators having exactly the same kind of agenda? Surely the sort of person who decides to go into that job has a kind of real interest in human rights and might interpret them in exactly the same way as the judges have done before them. I think the Home Office thinks that they might have a little bit more control over professional adjudicators employed by the Home Office than they do by lawyers.
Do you think any government at the moment would be able to solve this crisis in time? It's just as you were explaining at the beginning. They can't. If they were starting from zero, they might be able to actually invent a system that worked. But now there is such a horrendous backlog that can you ever catch up?
Well, it's a really interesting question. And of course, Nigel Farage believes that he can. Really interesting interview with him yesterday in the Times. Even he admits that it would be incredibly expensive. What he would like to do is have a 6-month voluntary returns period, a sort of amnesty, essentially, where migrants who've come here, who are awaiting their appeals, so they're being housed in hotels at the moment, could choose to be sent home. Now, he would immediately give them, no questions asked, £2,500 and pay all of their airfares and expenses to get back to the country that they came from. He admits that that would be very, very expensive indeed, but he says that actually over the course of 5 or 10 years, the overall cost would be a lot smaller. So that's what he thinks he could do. That's the kind of most drastic, most dramatic solution. Kemi Badenoch is going to announce, we're pretty sure, at Conservative Party conference, that she would want to leave the European Court of Human Rights. Obviously, that would speed things up a lot more. But as you say, with a backlog this size, it's going to be really, really tricky, particularly with just so much opposition from within the establishment. Left-wing Labour MPs, human rights lawyers, charities, Refugee Council is very vocal at the moment too. It's a really, really tough ask.
Yes, I don't envy the governments trying to do this, actually.
No, and you could argue that if Nigel Farage is looking forward to the point where he might become Prime Minister, you've got another 4 years of not sorting out the problem. So how big's the backlog going to be by then?
Indeed, and lawyers making a lot of money out of all of this as well.
Yes, you can't help think they were laughing all the way to the bank. Olivia, thanks very, very much indeed. Lovely to see you back.